In this episode of VCast Studio with Naveen Naqvi.
I keep saying it's creativity with commerce. So you're not being creative just for the sake of being creative. We are there to solve a problem. While they're at university or as soon as they step out, they need to really figure out very fast that, what skills are needed, how to immerse themselves, how to network, how to, meet people. So I think ये बहुत ज़रूरी है. You do have to prioritize. I don't think you should be killing yourself trying to do everything, which I think women try and do. We have music, we have art, we have, writers, we have plays, we have, so much that we can offer. Anyone who comes to Pakistan is one of the most hospitable nations in the world, right? The amount of philanthropy that this country does, okay? Of course, you need to build a brand to attract tourism. You need to attract foreign investment. It's all got to do with your branding.
Welcome to the VCast Studio. We have with us today Seema Jaffer, the CEO of Bond Advertising. Seema is well known for the awards that she has won for her campaign and for her expertise in communications, as well as her commitment to women empowerment and education. Welcome to VCast.
Thanks, Naveen. Lovely being here.
That's great. So Seema, just to give you a bit of a background, this web series aims to answer questions that interest young professionals with aspirations to work their way towards the field that you may specialize in, and for team leaders who are committed to creating a generation that is worthy of taking over the reins from you, in fact. So, and in the bigger picture, we're interested in seeing where Pakistan fits into a highly competitive world and how Pakistan can contribute towards that global growth, right? So the first thing that I want to ask you is, what kind of leadership stance do you take?
Okay, so my journey has been a long one. I've been I think over 30 years now in this industry. And I started, it was a family business. My father started it and I literally kind of took over the baton at some stage. My leadership style is quite different from what was his. And, but of course I did learn a lot from him. And I find myself as being more of a conscious leader. And what I mean by that is sort of very aware of what people want now from the workplace. And I think that's an issue we all battle with in the advertising and other industries, how to retain young talent, how to keep them going, how to keep them excited. And I find that now more and more the people that are entering the workplace, this Generation Z, are looking for other things. They're not looking like when we entered the workplace, it was a lot about, salaries and, rewards and promotions. Now they actually are looking at things like well-being, their mental health, flexibility. They don't want to be tied to the desk. So when I say conscious leadership, what I really mean is that providing a space, first of all, which is safe. And I hire a lot of women. I think I have a bias actually on hiring women. And so a space that's safe, zero tolerance for any kind of harassment. Secondly, a space which is, as a leader, I'm adaptive, right? So hybrid working situations.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that.
And I was doing this even before COVID. So what had happened is, I had these bunch of young women who used to work for me, and then they all got married and started their families, etc. And what I realized is these were valuable assets or valuable people that I needed to retain. And so what happened is that they would still work for me, but they would work from home. And this is 10 years pre-COVID, right? And it was a fantastic situation because when we would stop working in the evening or on weekends, that's when they would actually kick in. And by the morning, we'd have whatever we needed. So I think I've been adaptive throughout my sort of leadership. That's been my style. And I find now more and more, one needs to be flexible. One needs to be, otherwise you're not going to retain the kind of talent.
Tell me something that when you say that you provide a hybrid workspace, do you feel that it's more productive as well when people are working from home as opposed to being sort of chained to their cubicles?
So personally, I love being in the workspace, and maybe that's the kind of training I've had, and I feel that the conversations that you sort of, even on Zoom, those conversations don't happen as much as they happen, when you're all together. And I feel that that sort of that energy you miss out on. But saying that, I think there's certain jobs that can be done quite easily. Sitting from home, etc.
Like
But
PowerPoints, for instance.
yes, exactly. But I think, yes, I do encourage people that it has to be hybrid. You do have to come in. Saying that, I have one woman who actually had to move circumstances to Islamabad, and she's been working now. It's been a year, and it's quite seamless and it's quite good. And when she does visit Karachi, she is in the office, and of course that energy is great too. So I personally prefer it, and I think you do learn a lot from each other and those brainstorming and that collaborative process. But I think it's workable. I think you have to be flexible.
Can it be that, in fact, when you're working from home, it can be more demanding because you're constantly available, so the work never stops?
And that did happen. You're exactly. In COVID, we were working with a very demanding client, and what was happening is that it was COVID and everyone was working from home, and there were no boundaries. And this is exactly what happened. And what we realized, it was in fact 1 month, it was Ramzan. और वो यही हुआ कि सहरी के वक्त messages आ रहे होते थे to the team and everything. And we were actually doing work on mental well-being in COVID, how to look at. And then I actually picked up the phone and I spoke to the senior management and I said, listen, this has to stop because you have to have boundaries, right? Working from home, it does. It became, and in COVID, I think that did happen. A lot of that happened. Now I think people realize. And I think a lot of the younger people have very clear boundaries. I said, I don't think you can, you can push them. But saying that, our industry is insane. The working hours, the kind of pressures, the kind of deadlines. So I think at some level, we all end up breaking certain boundaries, but I try and respect it as much as I can. And I do request my clients also to, as partners, to request it, to, follow those lines.
So tell me something about what you think of the importance of mentorship.
Okay, so I think it's invaluable. Growing up, I was an agency brat. And when I entered the workplace, my father was my biggest mentor, and I learned a lot from him. And I think I do a lot of mentoring myself because I think I realized how valuable it was. But saying that, I didn't have a female role model. There were very few women in leadership roles at that time. There were women in the advertising industry, which has always been more sort of welcoming, in terms of the creatives and all. But there was no woman I could turn to and ask for advice, and there was no community as such. Now, mentoring, I think you get access to rooms, to conversations, to spaces, to insights, to experiences that, somebody else has gone through. And I think it's very important. It's very important to bounce ideas off, to set goals, to even sort of engage and navigate situations, work-life balance, what do I do? This has happened at work, I'm being harassed. So I've mentored mostly women. And I find that it gives me a great feeling to see them succeed. I mostly mentored women within my agency, but now we have a platform. And thanks to Atiya Zaidi, we have a platform called Sheroes where a lot of women are there. And
so
I think it's,
full disclosure.
Yeah, we saw it. And I think so it's sort of opening up to this whole idea of how important mentorship is. And women don't network enough, Naveen. I mean, that's, I think, men do, they network. Mentorship also opens doors for you, right? So right. Connections, networking, which is so important, opening those doors. And I think it's really, really important. Cannes Lions has this program called See It, Be It, which is if you see it, you'll be it. And it's more like a role model thing, not mentoring per se, but I think we need to have a more structured mentoring sort of something going on here, platform, I think, for both men and women, I think, which would be very beneficial, especially in the creative industry. I think it's important.
You mentioned Atiya Zaidi. She was a guest here at VCast Studio. And one of the questions that I asked her was that, how do you succeed in a male-dominated field like advertising? And she turned around and she said to me that actually, no, there are a lot of women in leadership roles, and she rattled off all these names, including yours. Now, do you think that, in fact, could it be that advertising is one of the fields where there are more opportunities for women?
Yes, I think definitely. When I started off, and I'm talking so many years back, and I wasn't in a leadership role right from the beginning. I started in the creative field, but there were very few women. And now you see, it's wonderful, both in the agency side also and across the table on the brand and the client side. There are women in leadership roles, and it's really. पहले तो you could literally count एक दो लोग, but now there are women. Amna Khatib is there, Atya's there. There are lots of women out there doing some great stuff. And yes, I think advertising, although it's very demanding and exacting, I think women bring a certain, I don't know, empathy, maybe you can call it, or something that is very important to walk in other people's shoes, to see, and I think that kind of lends them to this field itself. And I think a lot of women have worked hard and gotten up there, and it's great. I mean, Sarah, she used to head JWT, and now she's moved to the UK. So I think yes, and I think the creative fields definitely, I think, engage women, and it is open, and I think it's very exciting. It's a very exciting time to be a young woman entering this field.
What about the transition from working in, let's say, communications or planning or creative, and then working towards being a CEO and heading it? So that kind of background, as they vary, what sort of, do you think, a difference would there be in the leadership?
So I think, again, women kind of dim their light, so I think a lot more women need to step up into the leadership role, and that path would mean a lot more time also spent, so leadership and heading an agency, being answerable. I mean, people are entrusting you with their brands, right? And I think what used to happen, or still happens in a lot of spaces, is that up to a mid-level time, women are there, and then they sort of fall off. Then they take a gap, and when they come back, again, they're not really, they haven't reset their buttons to get onto there. So the few women who do make it, and the few women who are there, I think they do have to realize that they are taking on this responsibility, and they need to give that kind of time, and they need to have very supportive, a support around them, right? Which includes, it could be family support, it could be friends, it could be colleagues, it could even be support teachers of your children, right? So I think you have to build that. Women more than men have to really build that support system around them. And that, once that is in place, or when that is there, I think then they have the determination and the thing to, I think there's no stopping them.
So when we talk about being a very competitive space, then can we talk about, pitching, competing and pitching, and what sort of ethics should there be in place? Are there those ethics, in fact, in the industry?
So I think pitching, again, especially when you're pitching for a big, used to pitch for government accounts, and there used to be 20 agencies called at the same time, and it used to be horrible, right? So again, in my case, I literally took a step back and decided that we would only pitch where we really felt that our work would be valued, that our work would not be taken and used somewhere else, because a lot of that happens too, right?
Yes.
And that's completely unethical. And whatever we present, I mean, we do have our sort of NDAs in place. But even saying that, I do hear a lot of complaints in the industry. This was our idea and it was taken, there was a pitch. And yes, it does happen. It does happen. But I think you kind of choose who you're pitching to. You have a conversation with the client beforehand that, okay, I'm making this pitch. And, it should, none of those ideas should be used. And, but you do need to make nobody pays you for pitches. I mean, I've yet come across a client who's willing to pay you for a pitch. There is, that situation doesn't arise, and I think there should be some compensation.
Is there a board or a union that could work towards that?
Well, we do have the Pakistan Advertising Association, and in fact, I'm a part of it because I felt you needed a woman's voice there as well, and it represents ad agencies in Pakistan, and it basically engages with government, with advertisers. So there is also the Pakistan Advertisers Society. So if the association, Pakistan Advertising Association, Advertisers Society set up some kind of a structure or format for pitches, I think that would be great. But I think the talk is there, but the walk has to happen as well. That, there should be some certain ground rules laid, etc. But I think you don't see that kind of pitches. I think now clients also realize that they've already kind of shortlisted the kind of agency they're looking for, so pitches are more closed. At least that's what I've encountered in the last few years. And only a few agencies are called to the table. So it's not this open kind of bid, unless it's a government account where they have to have an open kind of thing. So I think they're already kind of shortlisted and they know the kind of agency they're looking for. And I think that's how it goes about. So there's a little more structure to it. But yes, these bodies should lay down. I mean, there should be certain ground rules. I agree with you.
Seema, what do you think constitutes a good story? And do you get that kind of opportunity now for storytelling? Or do you just have a brief that is supplied to you?
So, Naveen, that's a great question. I mean, storytelling is key to what we do, right? I mean, here we are building brands, creating brands, and there has to be a compelling story. And this is what I don't think we're given enough room in most cases to take those risks. Yes, some clients do, but I think even agencies have to create that space for that risk taking, to tell stories that are different. Okay, right now I know we're seeing that there's a whole trend towards inclusion, okay, women
Yes.
empowerment. So you see even, the Shan Masala doing lovely stuff of the man in the kitchen, other detergent ads showing the man doing the washing, and there's all of that happening. But do we have stories of divorced women, of women remarrying? Do we have stories of the transgender community? Do we have stories of minorities? We grew up with beautiful Parsi families and homes and cuisine and food, and similarly, do we have those stories coming out? I don't think so. And I think we need to push, of course, as well, and try and push that. And I think even brands need to start taking those risks and telling different kinds of stories. But saying that, I think there's a lot of original storytelling happening.
Okay,
and
good.
I feel that what we need to do is not let it become formulaic, which is then what happens, that everyone goes towards that same kind of bandwagon, right?
Yeah.
Now we have to sort of break out of that and, push boundaries a little more, take more risks.
So, in fact, advertising, in a sense, can challenge norms, shape societies, but it can also just be a reflection of what it is that's going on. So, do you feel that that's more the case here? And if it is, then how does that change? How do you go about doing that?
I think it's both. I think what's happening is that advertising can definitely build a narrative.
Yeah.
It can shape public opinion. I think media can, right? It's advertising, it's the dramas that we see, it's film that we see. So I think advertising does play a role, and it's constantly in your face, right? You're on your phone and this ad pops up, you're watching a TV play or whatever, news. So I think it has a role, it has a responsibility. In some cases, boundaries are being pushed. So I'll give you an example. So Cadbury has recently done a fabulous campaign, and I wrote about it in Aurora also, on girls cricket. And this Bisma Maroof, and you can become like a role model, right? And they didn't only do the campaign to say that it's great for girls to play cricket, but they actually followed through, because when I read about it, they're doing these training camps as well. So they actually walked the talk, and they had the packaging. They did the whole kind of 360 degrees. I think it's a beautiful campaign, because it really, it really compels you to feel that yes, girls can achieve, can be cricketers, etc. And we're seeing that around us. I did a campaign for marginalized girls and how sports can change their lives. This is for the National Commission for Human Rights, who I work with. And it just concluded last month, and it was teaching girls football from marginalized communities, and the campaign, and letting other girls see what they can achieve. So there were girls from Liari, there were girls from the Hazara community in Quetta, and there was a Chitral Karishma Ali Foundation. And there was 4 months of training and stories and role models, and there was a final. And the girls that came up to me and said that, this has changed our life, and the girls who saw it on digital media, again, they wanted to join these camps and do things. So it kind of totally changed the narrative. So I think, yes, advertising can play a very important role, but then you also still see ads with misogyny and yes. So I can't say that, there was this ad, it was a car ad, or there was this beauty bulb.
In a review for Aurora,
that's the one, I've called out too.
You called out, that ad, and talked about discrimination against women and objectification in advertising.
Yes, yeah.
I think it was a car ad.
It was a Changan, or what was the brand? I'm not scared of calling the brand out. I think it needs to be called out. And then there was this other beauty cream, I've even forgotten, Golden Pearl or something, which was all about, whiteness and, look at your wife, look at me, I'm white and she's not. And it was horrible, right? And I think, again, some kind of regulation, something, because this kind of bias and this kind of stereotyping is terrible, right? And we have loads of these beauty cream ads. I think media is running on them, the television media. And, what are they saying? What are they teaching young girls? Dove did this beautiful Real Beauty.
I love that campaign.
Yeah, and there was another campaign recently about young girls and how social media, it was a global campaign, and how social media is, making them feel insecure all the time about their sort of body image, their self-image, their nose, their eyes, and all these filters, what they do to young girls. And, it was a beautiful campaign. So again, there was advertising actually showing face. Another campaign, which was global, was Olay, which is a P&G brand, I think. And it was using tech. So what their biases, unconscious biases, their biases in tech. So when you ask an algorithm, show me a picture of beauty, it was all white faces. And female beauty. And there were very few brown and black faces represented. So it's, again, teaching the algorithm also, because the algorithm is basically the result of our own biases. Exactly. So I think a lot of work has to be done. And I think advertising, and especially now with tech-enabled advertising, I think a lot can be done. And I think people are trying to do it, but on the other side, I think you need to also call out. Call out the brands, call out the companies, call out the agencies, so that they are more aware. I think a lot of times awareness bhi nahi hoti. I think you're just doing it, कि ये है, अच्छा गाड़ी है, औरत है, सोचा ही नहीं. So I think वो सिखाना भी पड़ता है maybe, कि भाई, no, this is not okay. And so hopefully next time around, they'll be a little more conscious, a little more careful, to how they show that.
Yeah, one of the changes that I've seen, having been away and to come back, and I watch television with my father, and I see now that there is a lot of openness where as women's menstruation is concerned.
That's right.
Right? So now that you can say period, you can see and I think that's a very positive change for women's health.
Yeah, because again, talking about reproductive health, about, period poverty and rights, all of that comes in. You couldn't even now you go into a shop, there's a brown bag where you're meant to put, sort of height. And that wasn't when I was growing up. That wasn't the case then. It seems that we have regressed somehow, So, but yes, being able to talk about that, being able to realize that, it's a woman's right. It's a natural, reproductive rights are very important, and this is part of them. So, you're right. It is much more open, and thank God for that. We've been through the Zia era where even models and newscasters were told to cover their head, right? So I think, yes, we have come a long ways, but I think still a lot of education and a lot of awareness raising has to be done.
Let's talk about education, not specific to advertising, but, actually specific to advertising in a sense. What do you think is the relevance of design degrees in the field of advertising?
So I think it's great to have education. I think to have that communication design, to have data sciences, to have that marketing degree, I think all that gives you a foundation and gives you knowledge and know-how. But I keep telling everyone who walks in after that degree and even before, as learn how to sort of look at society around you. That's your biggest learning ground, right? What are people consuming? I said, consume media. I sit and watch most of the plays, and I've had that. I read all the newspapers. I'm like, an avid sort of scroller of TikTok and social media. And I tell them, you need to know what's happening. If you need to engage with that target audience, you need to know what that person is consuming, right?
Right.
You need to know which song, which meme, which sort of, like right now there's a big thing about, especially among the youth, about stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
Who are the names? These influencers. I mean, they're doing fantastic stuff. Know which influencers out there. What are people listening to? And it's quite open. It's much more open on digital media than it is on TV. So I think, yes, the degree, etc., is all important. And look at design around you. I think we all learn, whether it's the wall chalkings and the truck art, and we can even learn from that, I think, even with that design degree. I mean, I did a campaign, truck art for girls' rights. और उसमें ये था कि we, had these truck artists who were men paint these trucks, and the drivers were men, and then they were stopping at these truck addas where there were men. They were talking about girls' rights and girls' education. So I think, again, yes, you need the design degree, but you also need to sort of absorb everything around you. And I think you need to know what people are looking, what are they consuming, what are they seeing, what are they hearing, and really be in touch with that. Because if you have your finger on that pulse,
Yes.
I think you will be able to get it right. You should be able to get it right.
So have a holistic and open approach towards. Okay, so now you've also served as juror for communications and design degrees at IVAA, Zabist, Habib University. So how do you see the fresh graduates that are coming out of and the design programs of the educational institutions that you've been visiting?
So I think each university really usually has its own ethos. So some are very strong on strategy and some are very strong on design. I think Indus Valley is really, really strong. I've been very, very impressed with the kind of work. I'm actually on the executive council now. So I try and give back as much as I can. So, Zabist, their media sciences is excellent, their degree. I've hired a lot of people from Zabist, and I find that even the jury work, the work that I've juried, at Habib. I mean, Habib has this cross-curriculum kind of approach. So you see design students, but they're looking at solving problems that relate to maybe architecture or relate to maybe, other areas. Philosophy comes into it, politics comes to it. So it's a very sort of cross-cutting approach. Indus is very strong on strategy, on the actual design itself. I mean, they're very strong, the fonts and the way they, and now a lot of these children are using technology. So
Yes.
there's a lot of technology being used, which is great. I think all these kids are doing some fabulous work, and they're using technology, they're doing apps, they're doing all kinds of, to, again, solve problems. And I think advertising we are there to solve problems. I keep saying it's creativity with commerce. So we're not being creative just for the sake of being creative. We are there to solve a problem. And I think these children, and I think a lot to do is with a lot of advertising practitioners also going back and teaching courses, these universities themselves, I think, sending their children for internships, making it mandatory. So there's a lot of that cross-fertilization happening. But saying that, I mean, obviously a lot more can happen. And I would really urge all these, and whenever I go to these juries, I tell them, like there's so many events happening, right? Advertising events होते हैं, marketing के ये conferences होती हैं, technology के बहुत होते हैं, digital events होते हैं. I'm like, they all have subsidized fees for students. And if you can't pay that, you will get in there free.
Yes.
I'm sure the industry is desperate for young voices and young people to join it. And I said, don't let go of those opportunities. Make sure you attend that, make sure you network there, you realize what's happening. Because they need to know what skills are needed. And it's changing so fast. I think एक चीज़ ये है कि curriculum को भी आपको बदलना बहुत जल्दी करना पड़ता है, because हमारी इंडस्ट्री में बहुत जल्दी changes आ रही हैं. I mean, now you're on that AI kind of pathway, right?
Bilkul.
And we're all learning. I think even the West is still learning, how to. So I think things are changing so fast that a lot of these young people need to, while they're at university or as soon as they step out, they need to really figure out very fast that, what skills are needed, how to immerse themselves, how to network, how to, meet people. So I think ये बहुत ज़रूरी है. LinkedIn use करें, Yeah. So
and come in just with a lot of confidence and
yeah. But I mean, I think they are our future.
Yes.
I mean, I've seen some fantastic work, and I'm always very, very impressed. And I think each year the bar goes up. So,
okay. Should we talk a little bit about building a personal brand? Like I read one of your quotes, which is you said, "This is who I am, and this is exactly who I want to be."
Yeah.
So, what is that? What does that mean for you?
Unconsciously, and then now more consciously, as I said, I realized that there's some things that I hold very important to me, right? When I went to study, I went abroad. I knew advertising was a family business, but I did all this other stuff like politics and development economics and everything. And when I came back, what I realized is that unconsciously I was drawn to the kind of work where I felt I had a voice where I could make a difference, right? And those days were heady days, when you come back young, you come back. And I remember Benazir had come back, and we were all
I remember that.
Yeah.
What a role model.
And it was like, okay, I can make a difference, and even in this space that I am in, I can make a difference. And what I did was that I kept my doors open. So anyone who'd walk in, any NGO, anyone doing some kind of work, I would do pro bono stuff. And I think in that sense, in terms of what you say, building my own brand, what was happening is that I was being true to myself, right? And then we got this campaign, which was this AIDS awareness campaign for the Ministry of Health. And this is a few years into my career. And I realized that there are these wonderful people around me. And that's another thing about me, that relationships are more important than the work at the end of the day, right? And I feel that the work will come if you build those relationships. And it was AIDS awareness, the first time it was being spoken about in Pakistan, and, government, and it was PTV and NTM. Okay, so only 2 channels you're talking about. And I said, I can't do this on my own, my agency can't. So I approached Hasina Moeen.
Oh, okay.
And she wrote the script. I worked with Arshad Mahmood and Tina Sani to do the jingle.
Lovely.
I spoke to Ghazi Salahuddin at that time. I picked up phones and I called people. I didn't know them personally. And nobody said, nobody ever said no. And, we put together a beautiful campaign. Asadul Haq did the first film. Asim Raza did the second film. Talat Hussain came free of cost. Samina Pirzada came, didn't, charge any money. And it was just, Farhad Zaidi was the PTV managing director, gave us 1+1. For every spot you ran, you got 1 free. And at the end of the year, or the end of the campaign, I think it was over a year, Gallup did a survey and they said 80% of people had some form of awareness of what AIDS is and how it can be transmitted. And we spoke about it being transmitted sexually, it being transmitted from a man to a man, which even now is bold. So at that time, we got away with it. So what I'm saying is that, so things that I did, I think were like true to myself. And I think what it kept doing is building layers and layers of who I am and what I stand for, right? And now, more recently, just like 4 years ago, I did this human rights project. And again, I was working with people in Quetta, Peshawar, Islamabad, Lahore, all over the country. I think gave me an opportunity again to reach out to people, build relationships. Shahzad Roy se baat ki, follow कर दिया मैं child rights के ऊपर, child abuse के ऊपर. I know, and he did it free of cost. I mean, there were no questions asked. Mehwish Hayat, Ehsan Khan. So again, I think building those relationships, being true to who I am, saying that this is what I want from my career, and trying to give back as much as I can. I think, and that kind of then doors open and things happen, and you kind of unconsciously that brand emerges. So I don't know, I am who I am, I guess.
I love it. So, but building a personal brand like that and working on that, how do you find work-life balance, which is such an important question right now and something that we're all thinking about? Like we used to put in, 14, 16 hours before. So now that whole mindset is changing. So
Yeah, I think we have to be very, very sort of recognize that it's very important from a mental health perspective, from your own wellness perspective. Uh, saying that, I don't really switch off. Even when I'm home, I like my, a bit of my. But yes, there were times, and especially when my girls were growing up, I have to go. One is 23, one is 18 now. But the being around doesn't stop, and it is tough, and I think you need the support. You need the support of the men in your life. You need the support of your family. My first daughter used to go with me, and I was lucky that upstairs was my aunt, and she had her own business, and I would leave Mira there, and she learned to walk. She wanted to, so all of that happened. But yes, there were times when I had to travel. I still do, and I had to do it. But again, I remember there was one instance where it was her first concert. Can you imagine? 5-year-old first concert, and you're like, oh my God, I have to travel to Lahore. I'm not going to be there. And what happened is that the principal of the school said, it's okay. You can come to the dress rehearsal. I was there in the front seat with the principal, and I watched her perform, and then I went off on my flight, and I wasn't there for the actual, and her grandparents went. But I'm just saying, you have to ask. Right. You have to ask people around you, and everyone, I think, comes, somewhere or the other you will get help, but you also have to draw lines, right? So I'm in a meeting, and even now, if I get a call from one of my children, I will take that call. I mean, whoever I may be meeting, right? And I'm like, excuse me. And people do understand. So I think, again, ask, people will understand, prioritize, focus. I think when you're home, focus on what's important there. When you're at work, focus what's important. You do have to prioritize. I don't think, you should be killing yourself trying to do everything, which I think women try and do.
Yes,
yeah.
Overachievers.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Feel like
and I think a lot of guilt. I think women live with a lot of guilt all the time. Oh God, I'm missing this. Oh, can't I be? I mean, I should be the first one in the school for the sports day. वो झाड़ू लग रहा होता था, few of us mothers, कि भाई वो front seat मिले so we can cheer your, more sort of loyal than the kid. So I think we live with a lot of guilt as working mothers. And but you can't do everything. I think prioritize and call it out if it's getting too much for you. I think take those breaks. I think it's very important. तो बहुत ज़रूरी है वो balance. And even for men, I'm all for men taking paternity leave.
Absolutely.
I'm all for men to also having that time out. I'm all for that. When I started working, there was no 2-day weekend. Saturday used to be a half day. And I was like, hey, I told my father, I said, this ain't working for me. We need to start giving. I need that day off, and so do other people, right? So Saturday then became a day. And then, yes, sometimes you do work and they're working from home and there's some deadlines and that all happens. But at least you have time with your family, you have time for yourself. I think that is important. And we lead such fast-paced lives that it's, fast forward, I've spent 30 years now on this, So if you don't take those gaps and you don't take that time out, you just totally burn out.
Don't you think one of the things that can be done to help out women, for instance, in the workspace, or, I mean, you talk about paternity leave, or, you could have like a child
daycare center.
Daycare center within the agency.
Yeah, I think, so right now, I mean, the women I have, they don't have babies or whatever, but I think some agencies, and I think if they're women leaders, they will be much more receptive to doing that. And I think there are some agencies that do have that do offer that facility. And I think everyone should, basically, because it's very, very important. I think if you want to retain women in the workplace, or even men can bring their babies too, right? Right now it's about equal partnerships. So I think that's very, very important.
What would you say to someone who was starting off a career in advertising? Why should one do it?
So I think you have to really sort of have this, kida, maybe. First of all, it's a creative industry, right? The kind of people you meet, it's amazing. I mean, you could be musicians and artists and writers and poets, and the kind of stuff you have to read. And then you're jumping in one day sometimes. And I look at my team, I'm like, today we just did this. for a financial institution, and we did this for a wellness product, and we did this, and we covered like 3-4 different industries, in that course of that day for different. And I said, that kind of high that you get from that is totally different, right? And you kind of multitasking and doing, so it's crazy. It's a roller coaster of a ride. But I think if you have that creative and you have that sense that, yes, I can make a difference, in this, even a commercial difference, and this brand does well because of something I did. I think that should lure you enough.
Yes.
And then secondly, there are lots of other areas in advertising that open up. There's data analytics, I think psychology, So I think if you are interested in any of those areas as well, marketing is one, obviously, then I think advertising is a great space. I think you learn so much. You meet so many wonderful people. So I would say that, I think there's no better learning ground, really, to be a student of this society and this world than to enter into advertising.
So how would you, let's say I give to you this project, Brand Pakistan. What would be your story around it?
So Brand Pakistan is beset with so many issues, as we all know. So many fundamentals that are wrong, right? That have, we've gone from what we used to be in the 60s. People said, oh, Pakistan is sort of the great sort of, that's all sort of seems to have gone downhill. I'm an optimist, okay? And yes, we have a lot to do in the economics, in the human development indicators, women's rights, children's rights, what's happening, early child marriage, honor killings. I mean, especially if you work in that space, it can get really, really depressing. But then you also look at the other side, right? You look at the fact that you have these young generation who are doing, gigs and earning dollars.
Yes.
Yes, there's a whole freelance sort of economy that's coming up. You see that Pakistan, anyone who comes to Pakistan says, one of the most hospitable nations in the world, right? The amount of philanthropy that this country does, okay? Of course, you need to build a brand to attract tourism. You need to attract foreign investment. It's all got to do with your branding. You need to have a brand so that people feel good when you are on global platforms. They know of you. We have music, we have art, we have writers, we have plays, we have, so much that we can offer. And I think, yes, the fundamentals definitely have to be fixed, but I think we need to also start putting that narrative right and putting it out there.
I agree.
We have women who've done fabulous things. Look at Sharmeen, we have Oscar winners, so we need to build that narrative and put that we can fix that. People love our clothes, people love our food. Yeah. So I think, we have a lot to offer. And I think people are doing things in pockets, but I don't think that Brand Pakistan has been able to bring it all up to say that this is identity, this is who we are. And we are not the terrorists, and we are not the, who you think, and the, sort of the misogynists and the white beaters. There is another side to Pakistan as well. And there are people, and our youth, I think, is our hope. So I think they will represent Brand Pakistan hopefully much better than we did, and bring it up to a global stage. But we need to use all the good stuff that we have here. And I think that's not being done enough.